want the melancholy because that's the real Alaska. Everyone, if they're listening in the lower 48 and they have friends that came up to Alaska to go fishing, it's all about amazing, wonderful fish or hunting, or I got this deer, I got this caribou, I got moose, I got all this stuff. But what is it actually like to be in Alaska? Yeah, once August start rolling around, everything is in hunting season. You can do that, but there's this pending. I don't want to call it doom, but it's
Oh, it
ending,
is.
and we're just going into it. It's going to be that dark gray, wet horribleness down here, and then just the dark cold up there.
Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night last night. I didn't look at my watch to see what time it was, but it was very dark outside.
Yeah.
I could barely see the trees. And I was like, "Oh my goodness. Fall is in full swing. We're losing daylight so fast. Here we go."
Yeah, you guys kind of go off a cliff. All of a sudden in spring, it goes from like once uh, breakup happens, it's on, and then once the decline starts, it's off. Here, it's a lot more gradual, but up there, man, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, and around here it's like 6 minutes a day at the most that we either gain or lose depending on the season. So it really starts to add up over a week. That's 45 minutes earlier or later that it gets darker or lighter every week in those really big swing seasons.
hmm So you guys
But
are you went on a sheep hunt. We're going to recap that, but but you starting to get leaves start changing probably like mid-August, right?
oh no, it's seemingly later and later every year, kind of. It's not quite ready yet. I mean, even where I was sheep hunting, leaves weren't even starting to change down there, and the elevation is significantly different than in Fairbanks.
What about
I,
like the tundra coloring?
yeah, the tundra coloring where I was hunting, there's a few leaves that had changed, but it certainly was very green everywhere. And
Hmm.
um, I mean, around my house here, I live in a spruce forest, so it never really turns that color. We have some kind of tundra, swampy, boggy stuff around there that some of the leaves change, but not much at my house at least. But I mean, it's we still have about a month before it really starts to change.
We don't have the tundra coloration, but when we get in the alpine here, one of the cool things about being up there is that vegetation that the heather doesn't really turn, but we do get some yellows and some oranges. It's very very little. The alders is the predominant deciduous tree we have down here, and they are so stinking ugly. They just get this pouty sort of brown, and then they just die.
Yeah,
And people who
I
don't know anything, they come up here, they talk about, oh, the aspens. Oh, we're hiking through the aspens and it was tough. I'm like, those aren't aspens. Those are alders, and they suck. They're not pretty, but they do make good carving wood and good chips for smoking.
yeah, and they're the bane of most people's existence whenever they first starting to get into sheep hunting.
Yeah. Well, let's recap the sheep hunt. You did a quick little sheep hunt there, limited on time. Nothing big. You don't have to go obviously into specific details. You know how this thing works, but yeah, recap it for me.
Yeah, so I mean, I left Wednesday after work. I came home and had dinner and just kind of said bye to the family, and took off. And it's just a couple hour drive from where I am for the most part. And just pulled off on the side of the road. I forgot to download on my phone so I could see like topography and everything from Onyx. So I'm like, crap. So I had to drive back 20 minutes the other direction to get to cell service, and then sit there and download maps on 2 bars,
Yeah. Did you
and
feel
then
like
drive.
the inner like Frank Glazer would be proud of you for going back there and being resourceful and getting the maps, or would he shake his head at the fact that you needed the maps in the first place?
I think that if Frank Glazer were here today, he would probably be like one of those guys from Hushin, or he'd probably have a YouTube video or some
Oh,
shit. I'm
no
kidding on
way.
that one, but
That's hilarious.
no, but I mean, yeah, why not use the tools that you have at your disposal? You know, it's not cheating. Like if I had a paper map, I'd use that,
Yeah.
but I didn't.
Yeah, I've done that before too. Like actually on the fly out, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have that." Or I have it downloaded, but it's not like on the phone, so it's just
Hmm.
outlined in that construction border. And I just as we were flying out, I finished downloading it. I thought, dude, come on, man, come on. All right, anyway, so you got your
Yeah,
maps.
yeah. That's honestly using my phone is not something that I'm very used to because most of my hunts are quite long. Whenever I go, I usually go for about a week. Um, and so, this is a good foray into using technology more predominantly in my hunting because I get to see how long my battery life lives and how much do I actually use my phone whenever I'm using it for mapping software and how long does the battery life live and everything. But no, so I didn't. I was able to walk in a few miles Wednesday night, and I was just carrying a handgun on my chest because you're just going through like super thick brush, um, and I was not expecting it to be as wet as it was, and I got absolutely drenched. And my rain pants didn't work as intended completely.
What kind of rain pants you
It
have?
probably Kuyu Katana.
Hmm.
So I bought them secondhand, um, and the first time I used them, they were fine, but I suppose it was just a drizzle. But no, going through a bunch of brush where it had rained the day before, or maybe rained earlier, like a couple hours ago from when I was there, just all the water was just getting mixed right into the pants
Yeah.
and just soaked right through. And so by the time I set up my tent, it was 11:30 or just almost midnight or so, and pretty dark and windy and everything. And I was completely soaked. And I got into my sleeping bag completely soaked and just had a heck of a time going to sleep and didn't end up going to sleep till about 2. And then my body woke me up at 5 for whatever reason. So I had woke up and my body was dry and my clothes were dry, but my sleeping bag on the outside was completely soaked. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. I had heard that like Primaloft down or whatever it is pulls moisture away from you and moves it to the face fabric to where it can evaporate. And this is my first time actually having to get into a sleeping bag completely soaking wet. And yeah, it worked. I was
Hmm.
very surprised and it worked very well. I was very lazy that morning and just kept trying to take little power naps here and there until about 9:30 when I actually packed everything up and kept walking. But yeah, all my stuff had ended up completely drying out, and it was
Oh.
very, very surprising.
What was your plan for mileage for getting away from people? From just kind of what was your expectation? Because when people
So
talk about walk-in cheap, they talk about just miles and miles and miles, and you're just kind of maybe hoping to get lucky. You maybe track the or look up the what's going to be the easiest and think someone else is going to do that, and so you're going to do this hardest thing. Or what was your plan for mileage and all that?
so for me, um, the trailhead is relatively small, and so there's only kind of like one or two places to park, and there was no one else there. So I was like, oh, I might be the only one here. Like I probably am, but I don't know. Just because I went so early, um, and I just kept on, just going at my pace. Like I put zero expectations on myself and on this area for this little hunt. It was mostly just like a getaway, um, just to kind of reset and everything. And so I didn't have much expectations. Definitely single digit mileage days per day is what I was doing because I wasn't trying to get into a position where I could compromise myself and get hurt or
Yeah.
something stupid just because I am by myself. Um, and yeah, so Thursday night, I went in Wednesday. Thursday night, I was just kind of hanging out. I pitched my tent, just drinking some tea in the afternoon, and I look over and I see the sheep about 800 yards away from me on this south facing hillside. I'm like, oh, cool, sheep. That's the first thing I've seen this trip. Like usually whenever I walk in, there's like a little area where that holds lambs and ewes tradition or historically for me, and I didn't see a single thing going in. And turns out that this one ram would be the only sheep I saw the entire trip. I did see one other caribou, um, but yeah, and so I was like, that's a odd looking sheep here. I'm just by itself, so it must be a ram. Looked at it. Yeah, it's a ram. It's not very impressive, but it's like a little bit under 3/4 curl. So it's like, well, it's there. I'm here. I got nothing else to do besides look at this sheep. So let's try and get a closer look at it. Right. So I get within, it takes me like about an hour to get within 250 yards of him and have him be comfortable. And I sat down 250 yards from him for about 3 hours, just looking at him with the spotting scope. And yeah, I counted 7 years old on him, and he wasn't even 3/4 curl yet. It was a very, very odd, slow growing, really wide sheep. And so it was a good idea that I did go look at it to, try my hand at aging it and everything. And, just the more sheep you are able to age, the more confident you can get, and, the easier it gets in the field and everything. But yeah, and so I kind of went back to my tent and ate dinner, looked back where he was, and he was gone, and never saw him again. And so Friday, I wake up the day before the opener, and I look back at where I came from, or towards where I came from, just looking around, and I see a tent about 2 miles back behind me pitched. And so I'm just like out there, just eating my breakfast in my bowl and looking at them through binoculars. And I'm pretty sure they see me because I'm not like trying to be sneaky and make myself not seen.
You did your morning jumping jacks in the morning with just your boxers on.
Exactly.
Calisthenics.
No, but yeah. And so I was like kind of watching them to just get an idea of like, okay, when are they going to get going so that I can force myself to get going, because I'm having a nice relaxing morning. There's no pressure on myself right now. I'm just pretty much camping and just enjoying myself. And I see them start packing up all their tent, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now it's time for me to push on, go deeper into the valley, get ahead of them, and, outpace them, because I am going to beat them by a couple miles at least. So it doesn't matter how fast they walk or run, I will beat them to where the end of the drainage is. And so I just, once I see them putting their tent away, I just start hiking, and I kind of try and look back, but the terrain doesn't allow me to see where they were. And anyway, I never see them again. And so I think that they must have saw me and just left. But yeah, and so I got up in between two creeks and was kind of glass on both sides of it all day Friday. And it really cleared up, and I was able to see a lot of country from where I was. And yeah, I'd never drummed up another animal. And so Saturday morning came around, when I woke up Saturday morning, which was the opener. It was snowing about 200 feet elevation above me, and really socked in and really nasty and wet and kind of sleeting on everything. And so I decided, you know what, there's some other stuff going on back in town with the family. I can just walk on out of here, and, me went home and hang out Saturday night and Sunday and do my thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Hunting as just a break is such a rejuvenating, fun experience. It can suck to get there, but once you're out there, it can be nice. Abby and I went up this. It's not a good hunting spot. Had I not seen a couple bucks there a couple days before the opener, I would have said, we're not going here. This is just, there's too much hiking traffic. There's a nice trail that comes right up to it. And then I checked the Alaska blacktail format. I didn't see, like, one of the bucks that we saw was kind of unique. And so I was, well, it hasn't been shot, so maybe there's a chance. And then Abby said, well, they might not have shared it. And I was like, who doesn't share a buck they shot? Especially if it was unique. Like, it has to go on Blacktail Forum. So, and then being 8 months pregnant, she's not as mobile. So we hiked up there. It was about just 2.5 miles, and then it was kind of foggy, but we just hung out for about 6 hours, just glassing in the fog, hanging out, and man, it felt good. I don't know if I was impatient, but I used to fish in a way. I would hit a hole, and then oh, there's no fish there, or I try to get the one that was advantageous or that was looking for food, and then I just keep moving, put miles on it. And same thing with hunting, just always to the next ridge, always moving, and it's nice to just glass and hang out and be patient and make some make a hot drink and just kind of look. There's a time and place to really go hard, really get after it. But man, if you just got a couple of days or you just got one night, just go, or even an afternoon or a day hunt, just going out, getting up top somewhere, and just that reset, man, it's so nice. I know it sounds like we're old and we are beyond our athletic purpose, and we're not hashtag keep hammering. We're just kind of like hashtag hot drinking. But man, it's great. There's definitely space for that too.
Yeah, the whole, especially being in like a low stakes area for me of, yeah, I'm just gonna go for like 3 or 4 days and 3 or 4 nights and just kind of hang out and see what happens. It just takes the pressure off. Like I'm not, even if I am hunting with a partner and we are trying to kill stuff and really trying to get super far into a country where we're trying to go 20 miles one way type of thing. Um, Even when it's then, I account at the beginning of the season to go in before it opens to create that or to make that distance up by the time that the season opens. Because like I'm not a runner. I don't run with a backpack on. I don't even jog with a backpack on. Like I'll get there when I get there, and I don't want to turn this thing that is supposed to be my thing that I look forward to all year to be some kind of crummy deal where it's like, oh my gosh, if I don't get to this spot by this day or this hour, then I'm done for. And there's people ahead of me, and oh my gosh, it's they're gonna shoot my sheep or my animal, and it's like, no, I I just like being out there, and it's especially with how poor the sheep population has become. There's for me, there's no reason to like get hyper animated about, oh dude, I should be in there, and if I just put in the work, I'm gonna shoot a sheep. And it's like for where I was, the population's not huge to begin with, so I'm not gonna really go crazy and think like, oh man, if only I would have worked harder, I would have shot something. It's like no, but what I saw told me that there wasn't really much around, so I shouldn't really get that invested, and I should just enjoy this. And oh look, it's dinner time. Well, I'm gonna open up a bag of tea and I'm gonna have a tea with dinner tonight. Ooh, this is nice.
Yeah,
And
there's more than a couple times I've kind of fallen into that trap of results based recreation. I was justified because, as a freelance writer and I want to write this magazine article and it's got to be a successful thing because no one wants to hear about, oh, and it was just great to be out there. It's totally true. But, I get tilted toward results based hunting and fishing. And that's just, I don't have the luxury of being able to do that. I have other job and other responsibilities, and so I should just the best part of my situation of my position is to be able to really enjoy these things and have a lot of fun doing it and not have that pressure um, of impressing the sponsorship. So you have to have a certain amount of pictures that you have to post per week in order to qualify as the ambassador or the whatever else. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are people who do that and they love that, and this is not at all to begrudge that, but it just look at your situation and live your situation rather than someone else's.
yeah, I think that while what you said is like a can be a nice way to look at it, I think that there's also a kind of a fine line that you have to dance with that particular subject. At least I do, because if I go hunting 3 or 4 times in a row and I don't shoot anything, well, now I'm pissed.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, I feel that for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's like for me, it's like yes, it is nice to be out and about and like have certain trips that are super low stakes and you can just kind of hang out and do whatever. And if you shoot something, that's amazing. And if you don't, well, I was kind of expecting not to shoot something, to begin with. But if I'm going, let's say caribou hunting, like in the wintertime, and I like the same hunt that I took you on several years ago, like if I go out there and I don't shoot something, well, I'm pissed
Hmm.
because it's like I have the ability to cover hundreds and hundreds of miles in a day, and I should be able to drum up a caribou.
Yeah.
Like, and if I don't, like, I'm not out there to, you know, beat up a machine and to like drive hundreds of miles in a single day and, spend all this money on gas and everything. It's like, I want to be out there to get an animal, to bring it home. And that's that. And so I think that there's like a fine line that at least I play with where it's like, I'm okay not shooting stuff sometimes, but other times I struggle really hard because it's like I'm looking forward to this particular position all summer or all winter and everything in spring. And if I can't capitalize on it, then I'm kind of a failure.
Hmm. Oh yeah, that's
And I think
that's
you have to put
definitely
that
there.
pressure on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's just kind of the with the misguided. You get obviously the number one frustration is not bringing home meat, but if there's another frustration about not being able to post anything, especially if you hype something, then that's where things get a little bit funky. I don't have anything to share. I don't have anything to get attention for, rather than just meat in the. I did a podcast with this guy David Coggins, and he's a fly fishing writer, and he doesn't post pictures.
The David Goggins.
Coggins, not Goggins.
Oh, okay.
He's a writer and fished in Patagonia and Scotland, Norway, and all this stuff. So he has all these epic adventures fishing, and he doesn't take like the grip and grin photo. And I'm just like, dude, that's. But he doesn't seem like the type of person who's like, oh, I'm better than that. He just doesn't feel like doing it. I'm like, man, like you do all these things. I would love to see a Patagonia brown trout or a tarpon from the Bahamas. Like you go there, that's secondary, but it's definitely there having a picture of it. And I think he does take some, but he just kind of likes to be in the moment, look at it, and then release it. And I think, man, that's a great mindset to have the experience, write about the experience, but then his Instagram is not just a whole bunch of pictures of all these fish he caught. And I thought, man, that's pretty admirable. I'm still good. There's nothing wrong with sharing pictures, and I'm still going to share pictures, but reminder of that attitude too is important. You don't go to the Bahamas to not catch fish and say, "Oh, it's fine." You just like you don't go to that on that caribou hunt and say, "Oh, it's no big deal." I'm getting to the point now. We haven't caught. We caught some king salmon. We got some other salmon, but we don't have a lot of halibut, and we don't have any deer yet. And I'm definitely getting stressed out because that's a main meat source for us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but again, it's the motivation being to get meat, the motivation not to be able to show off or, you know, post.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, I kind of like this was probably 5, 6 years ago now. I struggled really hard for a hot minute or with Instagram rather, about getting like really jealous to an extent and like kind of pissed off that my life wasn't, as good as other people's because it's like, oh my gosh, they get to go out and look at what they're shooting and I'm home and oh, my hunt didn't pan out the way I wanted to, or I shot a really small one, but look at the size of this one and, all this and that. And it was a very childish thing to struggle about, but, um, you know, that was my personal issue at one point. And so I worked past it and started to not care and everything. And it's like, okay, yep, they have their life and I have my life, blah, blah, blah. And then like a couple of years after that, I remember I went caribou hunting in the winter with a buddy of mine, and we had each shot caribou. And after the day was done and I got the caribou home and I looked back and everything, I um, just pulled up my phone like normal and was like, oh, let's see what kind of pictures I took. And I didn't take a single picture of anything, not the caribou alive, not the caribou dead, not me with the caribou, not the caribou or any the machines loaded up in the back of the truck. It was like nothing. And so I was like, whoa, I have no documentation of this animal. It's like, it feels kind of nice to just
Mm-hmm.
be like, yep, went hunting, shot something. Yep, it's here in my house and we're going to eat it. And I'm not posting it to nowhere or nothing
Yeah,
for nobody.
yeah. It's funny too. You like, a guy like Justin Schaefer. The guy has so many animals like under his belt or to his credit or however you want to state it, right? And it's like, well, it must be nice, he gets to do this, he gets to do this. The guy was an Army Ranger. Like the amount of suffering that he went through and the discipline that he has and the stuff that he saw, like he has qualified for that position. So I'm a high school teacher. I have not qualified for that same position. Let's not get jealous about all the opportunities that these other people have or start that it must be nice type games. Like, man, I made my choices and I still get to live a heck of an unbelievable life here. So, if I wasn't willing to do that sacrifice or go down that path and come out the other end, because I mean, there's a lot of people that talked about, the wounded warriors and a lot of veterans that get involved in hunting and fishing and things like that as a way to kind of put. There's just a lot of stuff to have to deal with, and so I think we kind of, even the same thing with like Frank Glazer. We were like, oh man, that guy's so awesome. It must have been awesome to be able to do that. Like, well, was it really awesome? Like the stuff that he had to go through. Like we romanticize so much of that stuff, and we cherry pick certain elements of reality rather than look at the story for its entirety and everything there. And I don't know. It seems like you and I talk about this a lot, and it's always something that's kind of there. It's not something that you totally get over. You get the right mindset, and then you're good to go for the rest of your life. Like it's always something that you're thinking about, and always something that you're kind of dealing with.
Absolutely, yeah. With this year reading a lot of books about Alaskan history and nonfiction, about hunting in Alaska over almost 2.5 centuries, um, that it would be absolutely miserable by today's standards, beyond comprehension, to survive, an entire winter, let alone, or like a couple weeks, let alone an entire winter, in the technology that they had back then. Like, yeah, they were probably comfortable to an extent. No one was like always miserable, but man, is it nice having a car that you can drive somewhere.
Yeah.
Or man, is it nice having a really cool synthetic sleeping bag and like a shelter that weighs only a couple pounds and it can withstand some pretty serious winds and rain and stuff. And oh, I can just have my dehydrated meal here and
Hmm.
warm it
Well,
up with some boiling water.
how many random people came up to Alaska for adventure or for gold and then got soaked on their hike and then died of hypothermia and didn't even become a footnote in history because they went back to their tent and froze because they didn't have the technology and like no one even knows their name. No,
Yeah, I
it's
think that the Chilkoot Trail is littered with their bones right
yeah,
now.
yeah, and that's we romanticize going there and seeking fortunes, and they did this, but yeah, yeah, or along the way someone got typhoid fever, along the way someone had this really just brutal, horrible, kind of sad, pathetic sort of not really. You died in an avalanche, or you stepped on a nail and got tetanus or something like that, and so that's how you go out. You have these dreams of fortunes, and then that's what happens to you. I mean,
Yeah, there's lots of stories of people who just were like trappers 100 years ago, or even 50, 60 years ago, and just out in the wilderness doing their thing, being alone and being loners like they want to be. And they get like a moose in the fall, and all of a sudden they put their hands in around the entrails and everything, but they have a little cut, and then they get some kind of blood disease and they're dead in a week.
hmm
And they just die in their little trapper cabin, and then all of a sudden some guy's like, hey, where's Bob? I haven't seen Bob all season, let's go take a look. It's like, oh, Bob's dead.
yeah,
you
went
know
went by
I'm
his
sure that
cabin
that has
and
happened.
smelled an odor, but yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the thing too, where people would come in like once or twice per season to get supplies, and that was it. Just live that loner life in the cabin, like you said, and that's just the rugged independence and man, whew, that's real.
Yeah, it would be quite an interesting endeavor to. I think you'd have to be a really comfortable solitary person to be able to withstand like a solid 4 5 months in a like a 10 by 10 log poled structure with a dirt floor. And it's like, yep, this is going to be my winter.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit here and do this.
I don't want to live on like the edge of society. I'd like to live close enough to walk and be able to see it. So like if you're living in an urban setting, you're living down south, like you're a long way away from that the edge of civilization. But if you're like way deep in there and you have a cabin and you're totally immersed in it, I'm like that's not me. Ketchikan's perfect because I can look out and I can see the beginning of that edge, but it's still dull enough where I can function out there for a couple days, maybe weeks, something like that. So it's I wouldn't be totally comfortable dropped off and just left indefinitely. That would not be good.
No. And I've had quite a few friends or family members or family friends be like, "Oh, wow, you're such an outdoorsman. Like, you should go be on that show alone. You would do really good." It's like, no, hell no, dude. Like, I could probably figure it out for like a couple weeks if I'm trying to pat myself on the back, and I'm probably delusional about that at best. But the idea to do something like that and truly subsist off of just what you have of a few items in your backpack and you're good to go, um, probably would be a really bad time.
Yeah. Well, the strategy now isn't people having skills to obviously all those people have to have some level of skill, so they are pretty skilled. But one of the main strategies is just to put on weight and then starve yourself. Which it's like game strategy, but it's not like in I don't know, it seems like a certain element of the show would be to all right, I'm descended from the people who survived everything. You go back far enough and all of us were subsisting off whatever was out there, and then generations and generations and generations and stuff happen, and so now we're at this point right here. Like how much of that DNA is left in us to be able to survive in the wilderness? And I think that's the compelling element of the show. But our modernized version is just okay. I'm gonna have a whole bunch of food and get fat, and then I'm just gonna starve on the show to try to win. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah, for me, that wouldn't work very well. I don't put on weight very easily.
Nah, neither me either.
I've been the same weight since high school,
Yeah.
and that was, dare I say, 15 years ago. And so, yeah, that wouldn't work for me.
So when you were packing out with your sheep, you don't really have a frame. I don't have the frame either. For like Ryan has the frame. He's got that kind of that wrestler sort of frame. You could put a ton of weight on that. What was your pack coming out from your sheep hunt? Actually, this last sheep hunt, how heavy was the pack going in? And then with your sheep, when you did that hunt with
So I've refined my pack over quite a few years. And so the very first time I went sheep hunting, I had some like Alps Outdoors external frame pack from Sportsman, some aluminum thing that squeaks to hell. And I had packed in 73 pounds,
Yeesh.
and I hated my life. And I had no idea what the heck I was doing, man. And after that first foray, the next year that I went in, I think my pack for like 10 or 12 days of food was probably close to like 58, 60 pounds. And even that is a lot to hike in somewhere and just be, and just know that, well, this is what it is. And I'm just going to grit through it. Whenever I hunt with somebody, I'm always pushing myself against them. I'm like, man, they can't see that I'm a loser. I can't say that, hang on, I need a break. How dare I take a 5-minute breather? No. And so whenever, like back then in 2018, when I shot my one and only sheep, coming out, it was like 112 pounds. And we had to do 20 miles out and up over 2.5 mountains. And that was an interesting couple of days of pure misery, of down in a hole in my thoughts, of just like looking at my boots and just taking baby steps and going uphill. It was kind of I don't know if my misery was explained or showed that well in the video that Steve Frith took of it. But this most recent one that I did, I was just going in with 4 days of food, rifle, tent, spotter, tripod, everything, I was 44 pounds. And so it went pretty well.
Yeah, that's
I felt
nice.
like a little jackrabbit going in there. I'm like, oh man, this is really nice. I can do this all day.
Yeah, the mental game is pretty important. Being able to do that, and then like your weight. When we were packing out the caribou, and we were in an area where there was some big stinking caribou, it was clear that we would have to shuttle. So we are going to have to like really put a lot of miles into it, but it wasn't like right on the edge of we could try to carry everything in one haul and make it miserable. It was let's just do two, and so we shuttled. Why didn't you consider shuttling?
Purely because it was 20 miles. I don't want to turn 20 miles into 40 miles. You know, it's
Yeah,
it's it's that. If it was like 10 miles from where we were back to a vehicle, that might have been, something that probably was more appealing. But also, when you have a partner that isn't necessarily like some dumb big jack guy that's like, oh, I can do this and I can muscle through it. When you have a partner that's about as big as I am, and that didn't even come up in conversation, it's like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. We'll just do it.
hmm
Versus a caribou hunt that me and Steve did a few years ago, where we each shot a caribou and had our pack. It's like, okay, all of a sudden 5 miles turned into 25 miles of taking 3 trips and shuttling everything back and forth just because you cannot do a single pack out.
yeah,
There's no way.
yeah.
Because I think that Steve and I both shot fairly big caribou, and our heavy pack of meat that we were shuttling was around 80 pounds, and the smaller one was about 50 pounds. And our pack of camp and everything was about that 50-ish pounds as well. It's like, there's no way that I could carry almost my body weight or more than my body weight um, in a single pack out. There's just no way.
Yeah, yeah, it's rough. Hey, blacktails down here, like you're not getting like two blacktails would be a pretty heavy pack out, but for one, it's pretty manageable. It's just a matter of the thickness of the forest down here that ends up getting pretty rough. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that I would really like to try deer down there
yeah, got to come down.
and feel what that feels like.
Yeah, got to make it happen.
Gotta, yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just
make it
one of
happen.
those things where, since I do really big sheep hunts every other year, it's just the way that I have it worked out in my family. Um, my wife's like, "Oh, on your off years, let's go travel for 3 weeks somewhere." It's like, man, do I want to? I don't really want to. I want to go to Ketchikan and this
Yeah,
and that and everything.
yeah,
But
yeah. You want to get out and you want to see some stuff. You want to maybe visit civilization and see it's not as bad as it's seen on TV or Facebook. But at the same time, there's stuff in Alaska I definitely want to see, and I definitely want to visit there, or just really enjoy the season of wherever you live. Like you endure the winter here, so you can enjoy the summer here, and it's kind of nice to just get in a nice routine of living the best of where you live.
yeah, and for me, trapping over the past few years of like really getting into it and everything is has made the winters much more bearable, and I get to take my kids out, um, get to just go have fun, and look forward to something specific every couple weeks or once a week or something, and just go and enjoy the out of doors, even when it's cold and harsh. I have a cutoff of 30 below. I won't go trapping if it's 30 below, but um, if it's 29 below, I'm going.
It's on, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool, man. Well, always good to talk to you. I know you got work. Got to do a little bit of work here. Got to finish up this here manuscript and get it back to my editor. So
awesome.
got
I
to do
look
that
forward to
before
your new book,
school's.
man.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot more history, a lot more to it. It's kind of. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. So
I am too.
cool. All right, man. Take care. Have a good one.
Hey, you too.